1, 2, 3, go. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Where the Elders Roamed. First episode of this podcast project with Leopard and I. As with most things that I do and most things involved with Revolution Esports, our production is scuffed. So there's issues. Sorry.
Yeah.
But as always, just like with Silver Scrapes and with Revolution production and stuff like that, we just like to talk, we like to hang out. So one of the premises of this, different from our past projects, Leper and I, is we're getting old, we're getting up there, and we wanted to leave a legacy of sorts. Or at least I did, and I wanted to drag Leper along because I know he can talk a lot. So thank you for joining. Premise of this show is we've been around a while, and we feel like there's some stuff that we can impart, and we just wanted to talk about what it's like to be in the space, in the amateur esports space, as org owners, as team managers, as players, all the behind the scenes kind of stuff. What's it like to start an org? What's it like to be on a team, change teams, help run tournaments even? We both got to do a little bit of that, Leper a lot more than I. But we have all this experience that we thought would be valuable to share and help and give people in the community some tools and some resources to start their own orgs and to get involved in the community in a productive way. Because it's kind of tough. It's ambiguous. There's no set process for how it goes.
There really is not. And then you see, and if you've been around a while, you see the people that they run one team once, and then that team dies, and those players get scattered to the wind. Or then you see other places where it's like this place continues to produce solid team after solid team after solid team, and a lot of that isn't taught and isn't
right.
obvious. It's not obvious.
And
if you think that it's just pick up the best players you can, that is not a recipe for success.
It's interesting, and we could talk about it because you hit on something. There's so many different strategies, and even within an org, your strategy per team and how you build teams and how all this stuff, all the minutia will change over time. But having like a core philosophy or ethos to your organization is going to be integral. But we can get into that a little bit later today.
Oh, yeah.
One of the topics. Yeah. So this episode is going to be getting ourselves introduced and getting things started. We both have been around for a minute, so we want to talk about how we got into the scene, some of our experiences there, and then look back on what it was like, what we would do different if we were to start again, what we would tell ourselves. If we were to go back in time all those years ago, be like, hey, Leper, do this, or don't do this, or have this mentality, whatever. We're going to go through that. And then the big question for today is what is it like to start an org? What does it take to start an org in this amateur esports scene, right? It's not a professional, like venture capitalist founded LCS thing, right? It's networking and volunteering. And what is it like to get all that started?
Yep.
So those are going to be the questions we're going to hit today. And then towards the end, we got a few submissions to the question box. I encourage everyone to go check out the form. I'll post it again in the Rev server. But throw your questions out there. Anything you guys want us to talk about, we'll get to it. We have a little backlog growing of community questions. But to get started, Leper, I want you to go first and tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the amateur esports community.
Back in the old days, right, of 2018,
holy shit,
Riot came out with this wonderful idea that they pitched. They didn't release it yet, called Clash. And Clash got me back into the game. Like, I've been playing since season 2, on and off.
I played with friends. Actually came out in 2018?
No, it came out in 2019, but they first announced it in 2018. And so I came back to the game and started taking it somewhat seriously because I wanted to play with my friend group, and I liked that organized play, and I wanted to do all of those things. And then it never happened, so I just kept going. I ended up realizing that I wasn't getting better, right? Like, that there was some issues that I was having. So I found a place that some of you may know called Learning Fives.
Fives. Is that like a subreddit, a Discord?
It was a Discord server.
Okay.
That does, like, we'll call it a 6-week pseudo tournament. It's really weird to explain what it is, and like from the greater amateur scene perspective, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. But the idea is that it allows people who are interested in coaching and interested in learning to get together, right? It's more a service for a server setup around the idea of allowing people to experience coaching for the first time rather than for people to learn, if that makes sense. And so it's like the general idea is that you sign up, people will like you might get chosen, you might not, and then you get your coach, you get your team, and then you might, if your coach decides, put you in like the end of like session tournament, and it's all of like 6 weeks. Um,
Interesting.
I
So it's kind of like a boot camp, summer camp kind of thing with a.
yeah,
So
it's
I
not
remember
super serious,
growing
right?
up in soccer, we would have some things like that where we'd have a summer camp. Excuse me, I'm having some bubbly water, and that is hitting me with the burps. But growing up, we'd have these camps, right? And you train all summer, and then at the end, they would organize teams from that, and then have them compete in like a tournament of sorts. Is that kind of what that was like with the
Basically,
this
like,
learning
and
side?
then and like I said, the main thing from like looking at it in hindsight, it's mainly there to allow people to experience coaching and
Gotcha.
work their way up and figure out if coaching is right for them, more so than anything about the players. The players are like, uh, trying to think here. It's kind of like that statement of if the product is free, chances are that you are the product.
Mm.
You
Okay.
get what I mean? Because you're
Okay.
being harvested for data, and your tendencies
Ah,
are the real thing that they used for their monetization rather than anything else.
gotcha. Gotcha.
Like,
Interesting.
example of that is a lot of those like car insurance aggregate websites where if you put all your information into this the to try to solve or sort all your like different car insurance quotes,
Mm-hmm.
uh those companies that are giving you this free service are then turning around and selling your information to car insurance agents who are going to then try to solicit your business,
Gotcha. Gotcha. So okay.
if you want to think of it like that.
So
The main purpose of the server is for coaches. The players are a byproduct. But I ran into my big issue at that time, which is I am taking this way more seriously. I'm taking my own improvement way more
Lepre taking
seriously
more
than
seriously.
everybody else. So I want to play this in a way
Yeah.
more hardcore manner. And through people in that server, I ended up through a chain of fun events. You know how it is where sometimes like you fail a tryout, but they
Yeah.
pass you on to somebody
Yep.
else.
Yep.
I ended up in with Attila
Oh
in
shit.
Astro in
Astro.
ZGG.
That's like way
Yeah, this
back
is
in the
summer
day.
2019.
Okay. Okay. Oh shit. That's so long
Yeah,
ago.
so that's when I got into Astro, and then that's the start, right?
Yeah. That was you played with Lynx back at one point on that Astro roster, right?
Lynx came in after me,
Okay.
because due to some fun things with people I won't bring up, the entirety of the Astro roster, including Attila, left after week 2.
Oh, some Rifters action going on here, man.
Yeah. Now, interesting note: if you check the ZGG team, right from that, Astro went on to win the split.
I think I remember because that was Lynx's ZGG dub. I remember that.
Yeah.
That's
No,
cool.
I don't believe it was with
It
Lynx.
wasn't
Lynx played
Lynx's
for another team.
because I think Lynx has a dub in top
Lynx's
lane,
dubs
right?
were prior to that
Oh, okay, okay,
with
gotcha.
Illumination.
Oh, this is so much before my time.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's crazy. That's crazy. So that's kind of you were Clash came out. You didn't quite have a crew, and you ended up like
Yep.
finding this learning
And
fives.
then basically after joining Astro, we'll call it a month after that, maybe 6 weeks. I was managing and running teams for Feed the Dream.
And that's about when I got to know you. Sometime when you were running Feed the
Yep.
Dream, and that was kind of that was like the bulk of your managerial experience, right? For running an org
Yeah.
of sorts. You didn't own or necessarily like
Right.
you didn't
Team has
start
always
FTD.
owned it. I didn't
Gotcha.
start it. I just you could argue and make the statement that like it was at its most well known when I was managing it and actively building teams.
Right.
It still exists, still makes teams,
Yeah.
right? I'm just out of that lifestyle.
You're out of that space. You're focused on being a player now.
I'm purely focused on being a player.
Yeah.
Like
You've
if
had so much experience across from running FTD
yep,
and helping other. I think you've helped a few other orgs in
I
other
help
ways.
Dolphins. I still help people
Is League of
if
Dolphins still
people
around?
ask me questions all the time. I did all the ZGG stuff.
Yeah, you did that for a while, for a
Yeah.
long while. It was a huge
I
impact
did
there.
ZGG for 2 years.
Yeah,
And then I had enough.
yeah,
And it wasn't even the players, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, the ZGG player base is the most wonderful, helpful thing. But, like, a lot of it was more the behind the scenes stuff is why I left.
yeah.
Those
And
of you who
that's
know why, but
well, it's one of the, and we can talk about this too when we start talking about starting an org, but getting the right personalities and the
yep,
right like ethos. When I say ethos, I don't mean just how you think about running your org, but also the people that are there with you and how they see life. A
absolutely.
lot of times, you got to have that overlap in just life philosophies and work ethics and stuff like that. Uh,
And that's
Nothing.
something that I will touch on too, because it's really easy, really easy to get somebody that's like seems to be interested and really seems to be invested in what you're doing, and then they do it for like 3 weeks. The honeymoon period wears off, and then you have to pick up the pieces.
And we could talk about this when we start talking about some tournament stuff, maybe in a later episode. But I tried my best to help Shang with ZGG and stuff like that for a while. But I was like kind of not. I wasn't a good admin. I had like a half a split maybe where I was really effective, and then the back half of that split I was helping with production. But that was kind of it, and it's part of like there's a challenge that happens, and this is like entirely me taking ownership over my. I overstretched myself. I
Yep.
overstretched myself so much, and I had made commitments to Rev and to helping grow that stuff, and commitments to Shang and all this other, or ZGG rather, and then things just started falling through and stress and all that stuff. And that's one of the most important things is this is all volunteer, and if you're not having fun doing it, stop doing it. That's
But at the same time, it's like if you are signing up for responsibility and you know what that involves, you do need to follow it through. And I'm not trying to say
yeah,
that in any other way. Like that's
yeah.
just from like
That's just what it
more
is.
for Free the Dream and ZGG, right? Like I knew that I cared about it, so that if people didn't do these things, I was going to have to do it.
Yeah,
But to actually go on to our next question, because we'll talk way more about this,
sure.
which is what would I tell myself at that time?
Back in the day. So you're
Back
back
in
in
the day,
20 no
2019.
so I want to split it into two things here.
Okay.
Two things. So what would you tell yourself as a player when you were getting into being a player back in 2019 or
Yeah,
whatever it was?
I was not thinking about anything else other than being a player. And it was, do not be so willing to change yourself or put team first.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be super desperate to be on a team.
Gotcha. So you're were you in a situation where you were trying to like just change your play style, change your champion pool,
Absolutely. Yeah, I
take
was willing
ownership
to
for
do
things that are maybe outside of
whatever
your
I wanted, whatever the team wanted, right? I ended up role swapping for
oh
Astro in
yeah.
order to get a starting spot. So like at before all of this, I'd been a fill player, but like for the majority of 2019 up until that point, I had been a mid player. I tried out for mid, and I was not very good. I learned things about the tryout process that I've learned since. That just playing with people for fun before a tryout is still a tryout.
Yep.
And if you tilt off the face of the planet like I did, they're not going to want to play with you. But because there was a need for a jungler, and the jungler that was there was not very good, I was able to just very quickly assert myself as a jungler and a better jungle option, and took that spot. And then I kept trying to ride as a jungler,
Yeah. But that
and
wasn't your
then
play style. That wasn't what
and
you
then I
wanted to do.
changed to support because
Mhm.
that's what the team needed, right? And I'm not don't regret those things, but like
That's the
I would
advice you
be
give
a
yourself.
much better player now if I had just taken sub spots or
Mm-hmm.
hung around in the scene and been a mid laner this entire time.
Gotten to know people, gotten to practice, and that's one of the things. I remember when we did Silver Scraps, especially early on. I remember the VBU roster for like two splits. The VBU roster had this issue. Valor Bulls United, for those who don't know, I think
Yep.
Valor Bulls United is closed down for now, similar to
Yeah, I think
EVL.
so.
But they're a powerhouse org for a long time. But there was a couple splits there in 2021, I think, that they were struggling with rosters. Like everyone was role swapping. There were players that were joining their roster changes and role swaps within those players that were joining. And it was one of those things that we kept talking to each other about on and off the production. It's like you're not going to find as a team nor as a player, you're going to really struggle to find success in personal growth if you're constantly role swapping, and that's okay. Like it depends on it. The only to be a little nihilistic about it, right? Nothing matters. So you ascribe value based on your perspective for the most part, right? There's inherent things that are probably generally morally good and morally bad. But when it comes to role swapping, that's entirely dependent on the value or hindrance of that is entirely dependent on what your goals are. And I would maybe argue that try to understand what your broad scope goals are as a player, joining the scene or new to the scene, or even like a veteran of the scene. Like what do you want out of this experience? Just broadly, it doesn't have to be very specific necessarily. Like I want to be the best Anivia mid lane. Like okay, that's fine enough, but that's maybe not. Go broader than that maybe, but at least set those constraints and stick to it. It's gonna be rough, and you're gonna hit times where you're not gonna have starting spots, but that's okay. That's part of learning.
Exactly.
It's better to fail a lot while trying to practice. It's practicing, right? It's like learning how to practice, and to do that, you have to keep some fundamental things consistent. And I think a lot of new players struggle with that.
Even when I was like practicing a role for a while, I would be willing to change up my pool or try to play a different play style and like force something that's unnatural to me in order to do what was good for the team, and that just didn't make things good. It didn't make me better. Didn't actually do what the team needed. Yeah. And it caused a lot of friction.
And the mental stuff is so important too when it comes to being a player. It really is. And if you're stressing about trying to learn a new role, like one of the things I always talk about, and this is one of the things I love about General Dan Obi, when he would play top lane forever and ever for us, he would not stress about trying to learn the carry top lane or anything like that. Like he would play like Ornn and Malphite and Shen into oftentimes losing matchups, but he's simplifying the game for himself. He's not going to try to, like, that's one of the things, especially at the silver, in the amateur scene, we're all really low in the skill brackets, right? There's a lot of really good silver players that have gone on to become master and diamond and stuff. You know, Cole, as an example, the classic. But we're silver, right? We're gold, and we're maybe platinum for a lot of us. You want to try to simplify by setting those goals, and we can maybe have another episode where we talk about player guidance and advice that we have, but it's all about simplifying what you can and making consistent some core elements so that you can spend your time and energy and protect your mental to a degree.
Absolutely.
Towards the things that are really important, that really do drive towards whatever your goal is.
Without going too deep into it, that's another one. Like I believe that there is way too much emphasis placed on counterpicking and having a wide champion pool that gives options, especially in IBS. I think that's completely unnecessary.
Most successful players are either gold players playing in silver or the three trickers, right? The guys who have 3 to 5 picks.
The three to 5 champions, and that's it, right? They might change up those two, but they have a core 2 that they're great on. And I think that more people will be successful with that. Like, but we can talk about
that's another topic for later. I took a note.
So the second question, part of that question, which is, what would I want to remember as a org owner?
Yes. So you go back in time and you tell Leper, who's now a player but looking to help out with that TD, what would you give yourself?
If I have to pick one thing, because I know that there's many things, right? Sure. But one thing it is, really think about what the purpose of a coach or manager is and what value that adds. Because I've used many coaches that did not provide value. They did not help. They made things worse, and I created more problems for me than needed.
Oh, you might have taken mine. You might have taken my answer to that question.
That's my big one. It's like I don't think you need a coach, right? Like, I don't think that is necessary. I think that, like, in a lot of those situations early on, even at that time, that I could have done a better job of creating results than whatever coach we had. That's my big one. I think that's there. And that's not to say that not to use it, but to really think about what those people add to this equation.
So it's shit, dude. I'm trying to remember. Okay, so not to give too much credit to this guy. I first heard of this stuff through Elon Musk, who I'm not a fan of. I want to clarify. Don't like the guy, but he espouses this whole idea of like first principles or whatever. Very not familiar with this concept. I think it's like founded in some pillars of some Greek philosophy of some sort. But broad strokes, this idea is like narrow down to the foundation of this idea. Like if you're going to do something or think of something or design something, whatever it is, narrow down to the core functionality. In my line of work in software, a lot of times we call it this MVP or a minimum viable product. There's a million ways you can label this idea, but it's like if you want to do something, start from the bottom instead of like you have the top level idea. Team has a coach, right? Let's work down. So you throw the coach on the team. What you got to work down to that foundational level of what is it? What is the functional value, right? Like what are the, not just the position, right? We all know in sports and stuff, there's these roles: the GM, the head coach, assistant coach, positional coach, trainer, this, that, and the other. Like all these roles, but you have to look at the needs of the team and start with the most simple, foundational, the one thing that a team needs to get started, right? And then what's the next thing that a team needs to get started? A way I like to describe this when I'm helping my software engineering teams and then other people in life like figure out like how to accomplish projects or goals or whatever. It's kind of loosely come up with steps 1 through 10, right? You've got your end, your happy point, and then you've got where you're at, and then all the steps in between. And then forget everything except for step 1, because none of it exists except for step 1. Step 2 doesn't exist until step 1 is done. Step 3 doesn't exist until step 2 is done, etc. And what you do by doing that is you kind of give yourself the rough outline and the direction you want to go, but then you stop worrying about all the intermediary stuff, all the stuff that doesn't exist yet, that doesn't matter yet. You can focus on what's right in front of you. And then that'll also allows you to kind of pivot as you go. With each step, you're going to learn, and you're not locked into step 2 has to be this. You do step 1, you learn from it. So when you're starting a team and stuff like that, and you're trying to build a team, what do they need? And it's going to be different for a lot of teams, but generally speaking, they need 5 players and a schedule.
That's
really
literally it. Literally, that is, yeah.
That's
like
it.
if you can get that,
you're 90% of the way there. You are 90% of the way there, and that's the hardest part.
The rest is refining that.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good way to say it. The rest is refining your process, your org, all your team, whatever it is. It's all refinement. It's not necessary. You got to get started before you can have a coach. And then and we could talk about this about starting an org, but as you start to build up an organization, then once you have those foundations down, like at Rev, we have a pretty good process for the most part of pulling in players, new, old, and all that stuff, tryouts, establishing our team, and setting the foundation with our team right away. Like knowing, all right, we've got our 5, we know what we need to get a team started, and we've done this enough to where we've got our process down. And so in the last year, we've been learning what it means to bring coaches in. Like we've had coaches before we got our process down, but that wasn't really the focus because one of the things we were struggling with was getting solid rosters and consistent rosters and all that stuff. But once we have those foundations understood and that process down and we can replicate that effectively, and it's not rigid, it's broad strokes, it's relatively loose, but it's just enough that we can always, at the end of every split, get the next tryouts going and get a teams built and be good to go in the matter of a month, right? And it's not necessarily not stressful, but we've got that process down. And by having those foundations, just like General Danobi playing in the top lane, we've simplified as much as we can. We've built those foundations to where it's habitual. And now we can start looking at our coaching and our staffing and like what value they add, and then where have we failed at this stuff in the past and how to refine that and reflect on that without getting distracted. We're not having to deal with too many spinning plates at once because we've practiced those foundations. And that goes to being a player, being a team, being an org, a tournament. Got to keep it fundamental and start with your fundamentals, build that up, and then build that solid foundation so everything else can come on top of it. That's first step. 5 players in a schedule. It's a lot harder than I think people give that credit for.
It is.
Because it's no element of all this. It's a volunteer thing, right? No one's getting paid to do this.
So do you want to just go into building an org 101 since we're kind of there?
Yeah, well, we're kind of there. I want to give some context for where I come from, and then we can dive into it. Yeah. At least give people some. I think most everyone knows my history and Rev's history, but I just want to throw it out there real quick. So back in early 2020, like spring, March, kind of late winter 2020, my roommate at the time, Dan, General Danobi, was they needed a support because it was Mr. Black. They're playing for MIT, Monkeys in Training, for the literal Monkeys org. and Mr. Black, their support, wasn't able to make practice. They asked me to play, and it was I can't remember who it was, but it was
Doc,
Aardvarks, Dan.
Aardvarks, Dan, Mr. Black, and I can't remember who the mid was.
I don't remember the middle. I don't think it was Kurt at the time. I think Kurt came for Rev. Or
It
was
might have
Kurt
been
with
no. It was not Kurt.
Unknown Angel?
That's who it was.
That's Kurt.
No. Now you go. You keep talking.
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay.
go
So
look through my collection of old ZGG sheets because I don't remember who the mid was.
But nonetheless, I did a practice for them, and that kind of got me into it. And me and my friends had been playing Clash forever, and ever since I was in college, I had an eagerness to like. That's 2013 when I started college was when I started playing League. My buddy Cody got me into it, and all of our friends. And I always wanted to play organized and competitive, but I didn't have the gumption or the dedication to like actually go and grind to be good enough to go play. And I started too late or whatever, right? Like I just never had the time to sit down and play the game enough to get to the point where I could go play like competitively or semi-pro or anything like that. But I love sport my whole life. Been playing sports and stuff, and I love competition. So this was a cool little inlet. Fast forward a few months, Dan, Doc, the coach Zufo, broke away along with Aardvarks, broke away from MIT, and they wanted to take that core team after they lost, I think, to you, Leper, in ZGG finals.
They did.
In a best of 5, where Dan played Zach Jungle at one point.
Yeah, they lost in semifinals, and then
semifinals. Okay.
Yeah, and then we beat RAR in in my opinion, the most convincing final I've ever seen. I mean, how many finals can you say that there's a player that did not die the entire series?
None. I've never seen that. But nonetheless, it broke off MIT to start Revolution. And they invited me along to have a tryout, and I tried out for support, and I remember just absolutely shitting the bed on Thresh. But they liked me enough on some of the other picks, and Zufo gave me the starting spot, and we played that split, and our first split was the Duero ZGG IVS split. So we were, and at the time, Doc was the owner, and Zufo was the co-owner, and the rest of us, it was just me, Kurt, Dan, Doc, Aardvarks ranked out, and Lynx came in. Token was with us for a while, but then we picked up Lynx, and that was our starting 5. And so we played through that, and we ended season number 2. The only team we lost to was a 2-1 best of 3 to Duero and the RAR guys, and then we ended up. Doc had some life stuff come up, and he had to step away from the scene, and we pulled in Chef Boy. He played our sub role, and the reason I'm getting into that level of detail was just kind of like a few successive events. We lost in a best of 5. We went 3-2 or 2-3 against VBU, who went on to face RAR in the finals, and ultimately got the championship after Duero got comp ruled. But it was after that best of 5, we kind of reset a bit, and I stepped in to just try to help pick up some pieces and start organizing the next team. Myself and a few others hit gold, so we started organizing a gold team with myself, Aardvarks, and a few others. And Doc came back after a little while, and together for most of 2021, or at least the first half of 2021, we were running Rev together. And he helped bring in Mystic and stuff like that. And so it was that I played that spring, and then I haven't played a single split after that. I kind of burned out in gold after we lost in playoffs, and I was done. But I've been focusing on helping to run the org, and ever since then. And we've played all over the place. We've had a few plat teams, many gold teams, many silver teams since then. But that's kind of my history. That's how I got into the whole space. But yeah, starting an org is an interesting. Or I want to real quick. Who was the MIT mid laner that you guys beat in semifinals?
It was a player that only played that split ever, called Bipolar Rat.
Bipolar Rat. Interesting.
Yep.
I know nothing about them.
Nothing else.
Nothing else.
I had to go back, and I couldn't find the actual master sheet. I found this through the power ranking document from Daova.
Oh, the Daova.
That is how I have found this information.
Oh, man. That's some history there, because we would watch the Daova, and the Daova was spicy. It was loose and like kind of open form, right? It wasn't very rigid and structured, and Leper and I and Deca were like, we like this, but we want to do something that's a little bit more structured and like kind of taken in a different direction. Not necessarily completely replace Dova, but just
But
take that inspiration and
different,
do it a
yeah.
little differently and a little bit more refined. And that's how we got started with Silver Scraps. That's how you and I got to know each other. That's pretty cool. Whew, so much history there. But yeah, so that's how I got into the scene. If I was to go back and tell myself, as a player getting started, I say don't take it too seriously. Play a lot of solo queue. Don't worry about your rank if you can find a way to do that, and just play the game a lot and find. One of the things for me is like you gotta have fun with it. You always have to have a foundation of fun and enjoy.
Yes.
League is at its core a pretty fun game. It's fucked up in a lot of ways, but it's at its core it's fun, and you gotta maintain. That's what I would tell myself as a player when I was getting started. Have fun. Find the core of what's fun about this experience for you, and make sure not to lose that and not to let other stuff get in front of it, and practice focusing on that and letting those other things kind of go away. I don't have a good answer for that because I really haven't been playing a lot of League for the last 2 years, the last year and a half rather, just with life and everything like that. Can you guys hear that helicopter?
No.
Okay. I live downtown in the biggest city in Iowa. And so every once in a while you get helicopters life flighting people out of here. It's chaos on the streets, man.
Yeah.
But anyways, and if I was going to go back to the org owner stuff, I think what I would want to do different when I get started, what I would tell myself to be more prepared and more practiced at from day one, is drawing a harder line with people. So I've not necessarily always been bad with confrontation, but I also give people a really long leash historically. And one thing back when it was Doc and I mostly running stuff, there was a good balance, good cop, bad cop, literally. Not that Doc is a bad person or anything, but he would draw the line. Like I love Doc to death. The dude's a great fucking guy, one of the best people I know. But he was also really good at drawing the line. He's like, this is over the line. I don't care. You've gone over the line, and then we've told you, like, we've given you reasonable warning. Boom, you're gone. For me, I'm not as good at drawing that line and at being the one to commit to making that decision. But when you're the owner of an org, when you're running it, specifically when you're owning an org, like if you're the ultimate point of accountability, everything kind of falls down to you. And it's not necessarily that you're in charge of telling people what to do, but you're responsible for the security of your organization and the people within it, right? Of making sure everyone is happy, healthy, and in a place that they can enjoy being competitors in. And so you have to be comfortable kicking people out of the org and be comfortable with tough conversations. And you'll become friends with people that you won't be friends with again after certain things happen. And that's just the nature of it.
If you are going to, even before we become an organization, right? If you are going to build a team, because that's how you start.
Yep.
You don't think about other teams. You just start with one team, 5 players. Generally, most people start an org with them on the team.
Yep.
I don't recommend it, but that's me in hindsight, right? I've done it.
I think it's relatively consistent, and I think we could say this is the start of us getting into the main topic of the day is how to start an org. It's not uncommon to be the owner, the founder, and also playing on that first team.
Yep. Super common. It's I want to play in X. I want to play this role. And I can't do whatever. A common really way that people who start orgs, successful orgs, is I'm not getting picked up in tryouts. I'm not trying to be rude about it like that, but that's legitimately for a while. That's why I kept building teams in FTD. Is I was not very good.
So and fuck it, I want to make a team.
Fuck it, if I build the team, I get a starting spot.
That is a challenge as you progress down. If you get a team and then you start wanting to build this org out, you guys have a successful first split, not necessarily winning anything, but actually, before I get down that, I want to talk about when you're starting an org, starting a team. You need, I think, regardless of if you're playing or not playing on this team, collectively, whoever is, you don't have to have a single person driving the vision, especially if it's just one team. But the vision, there needs to be a singular vision. And you guys need to generally, and it doesn't have to, again, I mean this in Generally broad strokes. Don't be super specific. Be relatively broad about it. Give yourself some wiggle room. But you guys have to define success for yourselves because not everyone
Yep.
has the same definition of success. I
And
know
if
for me, in my
it,
ethos with Rev, I don't care if we build a team that loses every match for the entire split. What I care about is, did the players grow? Did they come out are they going to come out the other side of this having grown through competition as a team themselves, have a positive takeaway? And did we, and maybe a little bit more like administrative, Rev does not forfeit matches. If we are in a tournament and we're scheduled, we're playing every single game we're scheduled, no matter what. If we have to get 5 E-subs for a team, we're going to get 5 E-subs for a team if life happens. But we never forfeit ahead of time or during a match. We don't make drastic roster changes. We don't drop someone that was on our starting roster just because someone else better came along and that's it, right? For me, our ethos and our guiding light on the paper is we're consistent and we're always going to play our games. And on the squishier side, winning is not the priority. A positive experience, an opportunity to improve and grow is the priority. And so that's, if teams can achieve those things, that's success for me. That's not success for everyone, right? Like, and
right.
as a team, you need to sit down. Maybe once you, even before you start doing tryouts, if you're trying to do tryouts or stuff like that, whoever is this core, you guys got to sit down and define what that ethos is for yourselves. Simple sentence, doesn't even have to be anything crazy. And then commit to that and have that be the driving force. So that when you get down the line and you're losing a fuck ton of games, you know what to do about it.
For me, when I'm looking and trying out for a team now, one of the main things that I'm looking for, and I'm just as concerned not with the org, but with who I'm playing with and who makes that team, because I want to be aligned with those other players. That if we're all at a similar level of dedication, a similar level of effort that we're going to be putting into this, because us being misaligned on that causes a lot of friction. So if you're starting out from the beginning, what the most important thing is, whatever your goals are, that everybody be on board for that thing.
Yep.
And it's really easy to just say, yeah, I'm on board for having fun and we can lose every game. But it's a heck of a different thing when you're there getting blown out of the water for 4 weeks in a row and you still have 5 weeks left.
There's two things. There's two ends of this spectrum that you just hit on one of them. It's, we're just here to have fun. That does not count. In my books, that does not count as an ethos for a team.
It's not something you can hold on to.
It's not something you can hold on to. The goal of competition, it's not we want to have fun. It's how are you going to have fun? How are you all collectively going to enjoy this experience? Is it we're going to focus on, like, it could be as simple as we're going to spend this entire split grinding solo duo queue. And we're going to get together and we're not going to give a shit about draft prep. We're not going to give a shit about anything else. We just want to get competitive experience and grind solo queue to get better at the game. So that next split, like, we want to, it's like, come up with those broad strokes. Like, do we want to build our individual skill foundations? Do we want to build a team identity? Like, where is the team at? Because one of the things that's going to happen is players and groups of players and teams don't fully form across one of these splits. It takes generally multiple splits. Most of the times teams don't stay together that long, but generally there's a core that will stick together a lot of times. And you have to learn across multiple splits. But yeah, anyways, saying we just want to have fun is not enough.
Another concept on here.
Yes.
At the very beginning, right? We're one person forming a team. You have to accept, you, the person in charge, have to accept that if people are leaving your environment, you did something wrong.
That goes back to the accountability. Like, if you're the guy or girl,
and I want to be clear, it could have been something completely unforeseen. Somebody got a job, somebody got hit by a car, somebody was they had a power surge and their computer blew up, right? But you, as the person in charge, have to examine that situation and figure out where you could do better, because any disruption to your players, your team, starts the process over. Even if we have 5 players, we change one person out. It starts the process over. We're starting a new team at that point.
And it's important, and this is something I've had to learn.
To go a little further, to go back, if you're starting a team, you can't do this. You are setting yourself up for failure. if you are doing this for outward reasons, if you're doing this to
It has
be
to be
liked
intrinsic.
or to be looked at as successful or to gain a reputation as X, if you are doing it for external appearance related reasons, even if that is just results, you want to be known as a team that wins,
Mm-hmm.
you are setting yourself up for a very difficult road because you are not going to be able to make the decisions you need to make. You have to be able to be the bad guy. You have to be able to be an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do, by the way, you are going to be an asshole.
And people are going to change. The scene consensus on you is going to change drastically over time.
Yep.
Like how people feel about Doki, I think there's a foundation, but people have gone all over the place about how they feel about Doki.
Yep.
But Doki doesn't seem to really care that much. I'm not necessarily saying, all right, picturesque, be like Doki, right? That's not my guidance. Doki's Doki. But the
But
point
Doki is
is,
going to be Doki no matter what anybody else says, does, or anything.
and there's something really like commendable about that. I have tried in recent times, in the last year, to spend a lot less time in the like scene at large. It's been interesting, and not necessarily because I don't want to engage with that. I try to spend all my time really in Rev, and I'm lucky that we're a mature org that's grown to the point we're at, where we have our community members are doing all that outreach and all that community engagement and stuff like that on their own. People think like Mystic and Scruffo own Rev or Shang owns Rev. People kind of forget
Yep.
that I own it. But that's not the point. That people know who I am is not the point. It's the fact that we have. I looked at my list of veterans yesterday, and obviously people come and go from the server. But we've got, I think, somewhere between like 50 and 70 people in our veterans list over 3 years, which I think is pretty cool. Like we've,
Oh, yeah.
and having a relationship with all these people and help building out a community where all these people have gotten to play for us, with us, and against us, and all this stuff. That's my goal. And so and that's intrinsic, right? That's my goal. And you have to have those decisions when you're starting a team, when you're setting the goals for a team, the ethos and like that. Have it be intrinsic. Don't have it be what others want to perceive of you. Have it be driven of what you want to perceive yourself as. And that's a lot of squishy stuff. One of the other things that you kind of touched on there was like, we want to be a team that wins. So there's on the spectrum of poor ethoses, there's, oh, I just want to have fun. And on the other side, I want to be on a winning team. People oftentimes say there's growth teams and winning teams or whatever, right? And I'll tell you, that's a fucking lie. That doesn't exist. Because if you're just going to go out and say, I want to win, and you ignore the constant, like, it's just philosophically two different sides of, or it's it's an incompatible within itself idea.
So what happens in both of these situations, right? So if we're a team that wants to have fun, what do you do when the fun stops?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I've seen teams just completely collapse, right?
Yep.
Like
in that same other side, right? Like you want to be a winning team. What
no
happens
one's
when you're
committed to
not
the
winning?
team. They're all committed to themselves and the result, not the process to get there.
Yep.
And so when the result isn't happening, no one's going to be on the same page about how to get that result. And they're just going to be like, fuck it, I'm out.
Yep.
And then you don't have a team.
You
And then
see
what was
this.
the whole
You see
purpose?
this phenomenon more in gold and plat
Oh,
than you do
so
in
much in
IBS
gold and
as of
plat.
late, where win first teams collapse over 2022.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the teams that I would describe as win first or pure results oriented have had a lot of success in IBS. That's
Yeah.
not always the case. Historically, they don't have the greatest amount of success.
I think there's room, and we can maybe table this for another
But
episode.
regardless, a lot of these teams, when the winning stops, someone leaves.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like going back to your point, it's like even that one change completely dismantles a team.
Yep.
Some of the challenges that I've had, and this is funny. This is something I think that people are really new to the scene might not recognize, is that like, and this goes with anything in life. It's all been done before, and at
Yep.
Rev, even, and for me, like I have fucked up in every conceivable way, and there are inconceivable ways that I haven't fucked up yet, but I will. I'm gonna mess every possible
Yep.
thing up throughout the entirety of my time in the amateur scene. And so sometimes we have people that like are new to the scene, and they come talking about like an issue or whatever, and there's often this immediate urge to change something when there's an issue, especially when the issue comes up right away. Gotta understand the problem before you can solve it. One example of an issue doesn't give you the whole picture. And also, changing the dynamic of a team, whether it's the players, the positions the players are in, or whatever, that needs to be the last resort, in my opinion.
And there are people, and I'm not trying to say that this podcast is inherently biased. You have two people here that believe that for team situation to be ideal, our ideal is 5 players growing over the course of the lifespan of that team.
Yeah.
There are other people that that have success, that are known, whatever, who their philosophy is completely different. Of there's an issue, we just need to change the player, and
Yeah.
they're going to continue to change players until they happen into something. And I'm not trying to say that that's wrong. It's also very, very random and not replicable.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, I guess that's the main difference, is right. Tex and I value being able to replicate success. And in this context, I mean success quite literally as in tournament, in league results.
Yeah.
That we're able to replicate success regardless of the same players, regardless of starting for coaching staff, etc. When you are doing a process where you're constantly rotating players out, that might be the situation that you need in order to boost results for that season, but it's not replicable. For every time I've seen somebody make a roster change and that team skyrocket, I've also seen it where that happens and the team plummets. So there is a bias here.
Yeah, and this
very implicit bias in this.
So, and we're on the topic of how do we build teams, right? Like we're on the topic of how do you start, and I think the reason that we're talking through this idea of it comes back to that ethos of having that mindset, and you don't need to be prepared for every possible circumstance, but if your mindset is going to be we're going to be a winning team, and the way we're going to achieve that is having the best players in every position, and it does not matter, nothing else like matters, then okay, you've committed to your ethos and stuff like that, and commit to that, define that, be consistent about that. That's not how I run things, that's not how you run things, but I'm not going to sit here and say that's good or bad or not yet. Maybe there's a topic later that we can discuss, but the core takeaway here is be transparent with yourself and with the people on your team, so that they know exactly what to expect, and be measurable. You have to be able to measure the value of something, of the value of your ethos. Like, why are we going to do this? What's our goal? Like, how do we measure success, right? How do we measure ourselves against ourselves in the past? Like, all these things. Like, how do you measure growth? How do you measure success? All these things. Got to make it quantifiable to a degree. It doesn't have to be some big arithmetic, but just say, if you can't say, I want to win, and you can't say, I want to have fun. Those are too ambiguous, and you're going to set yourself up for failure. If you want to have fun, go play Clash. If you want to win, also go play Clash, right? Like, if that's it. But if you're going to be in comp, you've got to be more explicit. There's this idea called SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, I think. But, give that a Google search. That's a good foundation to get going. But we've got those two spectrums, right? So now let's ask ourselves a question. I have a team of players. We have set our goal. We have defined it reasonably. It's not we want to win. It's not just we want to have fun. We expect to have fun. And we've defined what our goals are. And there's 5 of us. Just 5 of us. We have what's the next thing that we have to do?
Find players.
Find players. So that's a good question. Let's say there's like 3 of us or whatever. We need to go find some players, do some tryouts or whatever. We've got our core. We need to add players to the roster. How do you go about doing that?
So there's 2 answers, right? There's answer 1, which is I am on this team and I have, say, 3 people. We have a core, if you want to think of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Simple answer is you get people in and you play flex or norms with the 5 of you. If you're really daring, set up a scrim, rotate players in and out. I'm not going to teach people how to find players. If you want to do this, that's a process that you have to figure out on your own.
So I
Because
guess
for somebody like me or somebody like you, finding players is a very different task than someone that is starting fresh out, because
yeah,
I have a name. People know who I am. People assume certain things about me. That repels certain people and attracts other people, right?
yep,
Same for Revolution. Like there is a level of notoriety or fame or recognition with
yeah.
those names that are going to create certain things that a brand new person won't. So it's not like something that I can teach anybody of how to find players. Please don't do of the Fierce Force and spam every single
Oh
Discord
my
multiple times
god.
a day. Like that's a thing that I can recommend not doing.
Everyone
Uh,
hates everyone hates that. No one likes that.
Nobody likes that.
And if you're gonna
You
spam it,
might
keep
have
it
better success
short, man. Just like
looking for team chats where
mhm.
you are direct messaging players that are looking for teams rather than just posting your ad out there.
I think
Like
that's a
that is
really good to keep with this idea of like being measurable and explicit about what you're doing and the actions you're taking. So when you're setting up your team, when you're setting up what the team's goal and the ethos is, you want to be measurable and explicit to a degree, not big and vague and broad.
yep.
Somewhere in the middle, right? You don't want to be narrow. You don't want to be 360 degrees open. You want to find that sweet spot. Same thing with finding players. If you just put an LFT out there, right, or the LFP or whatever post, and you're just like looking for players, here's the specs, you're gonna get everything and nothing. You're gonna get everything and nothing. And
You
yeah.
will also learn that people can't read.
Oh yeah, we have plat people that message us about an IBS tryout, and they're
Yep.
like,
All the
"Hey,
time.
you're looking for a team?" And it's like, "Yeah, send us your PGG." And it's like Diamond
There's
One or whatever. It's like,
another conversation that we can have about like Smurfs and
oh,
suspicious
we
behavior
can
and
get
all that. That's a
into.
different conversation.
I think there's room
But
for like very specific conversation, like for us to be very specific about like right now we're talking kind of lofty and philosophical to a
yep,
degree, but there's a lot of room to be like, here's some very exact things to do and not do when you're trying to
yes,
organize a team. We
there
can help walk
really
you through
are.
that.
Uh, but so we have our three people.
Yeah.
We play flex or we set up a scrim or whatever,
And you've
and
gone
we're
and DM'd
rotating
some people,
players in
you've
and out.
pulled in
And the
people.
thing that you really want to look for at this time is separate from results.
Yeah.
Who do the three of you like being around?
Anyone, and I think for anyone who is listening that's been in a part of a Revolution Esports tryout, you've heard me give the spiel. You've heard Mystic and Scruffo and Doc back in the day give the spiel. Um, we can we look for attitude over aptitude. I can teach you, our coaches and staff and the game itself can teach you how to play. And this is one of the things that I have learned over time that I just am not going to bother with, but like anymore. I used to try, but like I can't teach attitude. I mean, I can, but that's so much work, and I'm not a therapist.
Yep.
So like you got to have that genuine drive, humility, and the ability to form positive relationships in negative circumstances with those around you, to build up those around you, to work past stuff, to not hold things against you. It's all the attitude. And especially when you're building a new team, and even more so when you're starting your first team that you would love to see become the foundation of an entire org with multiple teams, you've got to get people that just like playing the game together.
And I don't want to be clear. Like playing the game with each other doesn't mean that they're going to be best friends, that they're going to be hanging out all the time.
Yeah.
It just means that like you like them,
Yeah.
right? Like if you are your first meeting, legitimately, right? Your first meeting or two with this person and you're annoyed at them, you're signing up for a commitment of minimum 90 days.
Remember, this is all volunteer, and you get to, especially
This
as
is a
the people that are
volunteer,
founding this,
right?
you get to choose a lot of this.
Right. And it's not pleasant choosing. I want to be clear.
No, it
I don't
sucks.
know a single person that likes the choosing aspect of this.
No, I mean I kind of do.
It sucks
I like
because
I
there's
like
a
telling
lot
people
of
stuff.
second guessing. Did I
Me too.
choose right?
Yes.
Did I choose wrong? Did that person just have a bad week when I decided to pass on them? Did they have a really good week when I chose them? And it's why like trying to move your decision making outside of just the results of their in-game performance is important because you're going to be with these people for a long haul.
And if you're one of the things about like feeling bad for making decisions between one person and another, if you're setting parameters that you that align with the ethos you've put forward for your team and your org, your goals, and you feel good about it, like this is what you truly value as a person, then the decisions will be hard, but you won't feel bad about them. And to everything else I've said here, to kind of tie it all together a bit, if you're transparent about it with the people that are playing with you, right? We're all human beings. We want people to tell us exactly what's what. If you be transparent and consistent, no one's feelings are going to be hurt.
Yep.
People will feel bad about not being able to make a team, generally speaking. And if you've been transparent and consistent about your messaging, your values, explicit with them about what you saw and the feedback for them, and they're still upset at you, best you can do, right? You wash your hands of it.
That's what's going to happen. Regardless of what you do, there are going to be people that are pissed as can be. They were not chosen because they felt that they were the best pick.
Yep.
Now, so that's if you have a core already. Let's say if we wanted to do this and say, I wanted to go out and find 5 fresh people. I'm just going to be outside. I want to build a team. I want to build an IBS team, but I'm gold 3. Or Plat 2, whatever it is, right?
I want to build anymore. Plat 2 could play an IBS. I don't fucking know.
I mean, we're not going to touch that.
Sorry, I have a
Plat 2 Flex
opinions.
2020. Is that okay?
God damn it.
And I didn't play any in 2021, but okay.
You're trying to build a team from scratch. You have no core,
I'm trying to
and
build
you're
a team
not
from
a
scratch,
player on this roster.
Explicitly, I am not going to be a player on it.
Yeah.
You have options, right? I've seen many different ways that are done here, but ultimately, you need to find 5 people who like showing up and being around each other.
Yeah.
That's it, right? Like how you come to that, how you rate those things at the core, they need to like being around each other enough to show up. Because, to use our winning team example, if they're only here for winning and you start losing some flex games, people are going to start looking for other teams.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose some flex games. I'm not trying to say that in any other way, right?
Oh, you got to be ready to lose a lot of games.
You got to be ready to lose. You got to be ready to do that.
And this is maybe if we're talking about like maintaining a team. So we're talking about starting, right?
We're starting a team
up for success. Future episodes, we'll talk about what it's like to maintain a team during a split and then maintain an org across multiple splits. Different things. Because one of the things is like when it comes to, I think just philosophically or mentally, you need to find a way to get excited about losing. I know that sounds like the most self-help bullshit ever, but you need to get fucking stoked. Like when you lose, you need to be like, be angry if you want, right? If you want to be a competitor. Everyone who's competitive hates losing. You hate losing. But why do you hate losing? It's because like you got to figure out why. But you have to get excited about the fact that you've lost. What is it there? What in this loss?
What can I learn? What did I do well? What did I not do well? The more you break it down away from just the result,
exactly,
the better. And this is the thing. I've talked a lot about this over this past year. If you are doing stuff as a team, you are only getting better as a team, right? Individual performance isn't the priority here, right? But we can look at what we did well as a team, what we did poorly as a team, and how to make that experience better. There's always things that can be done, but that's the basics, right? Like you just build one team, start a team, find some players, get it together.
The most important thing, I think a lot of people, now we talk about bias a little bit, right? And I think one of the reasons that you and I work well together when it comes to production and helping run stuff and just getting stuff forward, we're both relatively comfortable with having, I think at least, so tell me if I'm wrong, I think we're both relatively comfortable with having just enough to get started and then figuring out the rest.
Absolutely. You and I are both like that. Not
everyone is comfortable with that. I don't necessarily know how to help transition people, but when I'm to jump back to something you said about being a player, what you would tell yourself back in 2019, be consistent, make it simple for yourself. Lean into your strengths, right? So we've talked about ethos and how to set up the vision for a team, and then the process for building a team, whether you've got a core or totally new. We've talked about that so far. But one of the other things I want to talk about is like how do you even get started yourself, like pulling the trigger on this? Because a lot of people might get stuck in the details of planning it all out and feeling like
You
they have to have
can't. You
one.
can't.
You can't, but how it's great practice for life, I think, because nothing in life is you can't control anything in
Right.
life. The amount of control you think you have less than
If
that.
you want to do this and you are young, and when I say young in this context, I mean under the age of 25. I'm sorry, right? And I
Damn,
want
no,
to be
I
clear.
know
I
I'm
was
old.
raid leading, running guilds, all of this kind of stuff at that age or younger. This is a great opportunity to learn how to assert yourself,
Yeah.
to learn how to manage things, to learn how to look at running something greater than just your own personal perceptions,
Oh,
right?
it's such
I
great
have to,
practice.
if you are running a team, you have to think about stuff more than just like, do people like me? Am I doing a good job? You have to think about things on a much deeper level
Yeah.
to create these sort of things. And it's something that I recommend people try. Like, but if you were going to do this and you were the kind of person that needs a strong plan out your criteria, write down, or however you need to, what your guiding philosophy is this. Design your tryout process. Figure these things out. What are my criteria? Make yourself a rubric
Yeah.
of how you're going to judge your players, right? These are all things that you can do in more detail rather than just navigating on feel. I personally am very comfortable like going, let me get step one, and then going forward,
Yeah.
because especially for what I do for a living, if I try to plan step 2, step 3, step 4, oftentimes in step
Something.
1 is
Yeah.
going to change step 2, 3, and
Exactly.
4,
And
and I'm
that
unable to use what I prepared.
goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like take the effort to come up with steps 1 through 10, and if it helps you, keep steps 1 through 10, but give yourself build into your process an opportunity to just sit back and think. Get step 1 done, reflect on that, and allow that to influence step 2, and detach yourself from the necessity of it being this step 2, and this step 3, and this step 4 onward. Know that your goal is here, and you're starting here, and you take the first step. And it's along this path, but that path is going to meander. And your goal might change too as you get experience. And I think one of the things about all of this is just when you're starting a team. So we talked, I think, in broad strokes and philosophically
We've
about a
talked
lot of
about
stuff.
starting a team. I do want to talk about step 2,
Okay.
which is to me the most important step of this entire thing is step 2.
What is the most important step?
Scheduling.
Oh yeah, shit! I can't believe I was about to get on a tangent about getting excited to fail in all ways.
No,
So keep that in your
scheduling
mind. But
is
scheduling is the
literally
hardest fucking
the
part,
most important thing about this.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your makeup, depending on the organization, depending on the culture of your team, right?
Yep.
You are setting
Dude, the
time
first
or no
lesson.
time, right?
Yeah.
Of getting
It aligns with your perspective.
5 to 12 people together at the same exact time for an activity.
For
And
every week or whatever, consistently
right,
for 3 to
3+
6
months.
months.
Right.
That's insane. That is so
You
difficult
have
to do.
to do this, and this is my advice, right? There is no good way to make up a schedule. Everybody's going to set their availability. People's schedules are going to change. A lot of the people, again, in this age group are working retail or working fast food or working shift work and have volatile schedules.
Yep.
It's just the reality. You're going to have to adapt your schedule and adapt things as people have parents, school, work, who knows what else. I have had in three years on 2 separate occasions players get hit or involved in car accidents within 3 hours of game day. Okay, on 2 separate occasions. So like you have to adapt, you have to have these things in place, and you need to have procedures of how you deal with that. However, this is my number 1 rule, and I have never ever seen a situation where this does not hold true. If you have a player or person miss practice without notice on more than one occasion, a change needs to be made.
Yep.
Somebody will leave. Somebody will like that person will leave, whatever it may be. A simple, very hard rule that I have is there is a respect necessary for people to be here. There are, again, if we're scrimming, that can be up to, on some situations that I've seen, 14 other people
Yeah.
waiting on this one person who
14
isn't
other
communicating,
people.
isn't respecting all of these other people's time.
And that's
The
not
number
gonna.
one,
That goes back to the attitude thing. That it won't
right,
improve if it is a pattern. One of the things I wanted to hit on a little bit.
once and communicated is very different than what I'm talking about.
Yes,
But
it's the
no call, no
communication
showing,
and the respect. Yeah,
and not communicating what's happening with people really does put a burden on the entire team,
and
and
that's
it
where you,
causes a lot of friction.
as generally speaking, if we're talking to people who are aspiring to start their own org, start their own team, and be that point person, it doesn't always have to be that way. You can have a laissez-faire, open structure. That's fine too. That comes with its own caveats. But that just means the responsibility is held equally, and you need to have transparent conversations as a group. Quick note: don't have backroom conversations like with a bunch of different people all the time about the team. Talk as transparently as often as possible, as upfront as possible.
The more people that understand what is happening, know what's going on behind the scenes, the better it is.
Yep. It's
Because
just, it prevents drama and it prevents hard feelings.
absolutely, you
And
can, yeah,
if you're going to be the person as the team or yourself, like you got to be comfortable being the point of accountability and drawing that hard line, whatever that hard line is, and being, talking about transparency, explicit in exactly why you're taking the actions you are. Have that documented, have that, and share that documentation with whoever is asking. Because like you want that story to be consistent. I've had times where people have come to me and said, what's going on with X, Y, and Z? Like I thought, what's this deal here? And I'm like, that's not what's happening. This is explicitly what's happening. And everyone I talk to, this is explicitly what's happening. For me, one of the things I do, this is like, an org that's been around for 3 years. If I'm having conversations, I'm sharing it at least with my admin team because I need my team, my core, the team that I'm running this with, to be on the same page with me. It does me no good to have conversations on the side or be vague or anything like be explicit, be transparent. And one of the things I wanted to say too was be reactive. And you might disagree with me on this. I want to hear your thoughts, but let me get this out there real quick. It's if you think there's going to be a problem, there's a fine line we have to walk when we're running teams. If you're preemptive, if you don't allow it, it goes back to understanding an issue before solving it, right? You need to allow things. You might feel a million gut things about this, right? Like I might have some perspectives on some teams in the past where I'm like, my initial thought was, I'm a little suspect about this. And I could pull the trigger instantly without seeing any actual evidence to that. But what happens is if that's like getting rid of a player or changing the dynamic on a team, all of a sudden you've undone all the work you might have been doing. And you're throwing chaos in there. You're not allowing things to kind of build organically. What you need to do is I advocate for being relatively reactive. Be aware, take notes, talk to your staff about stuff that you see or whatever. But like, don't pull any triggers. Wait till you start seeing things evidence your concerns. And and be okay with if you are suspect about somebody and they show you in every way that your suspicions were off, accept that. Allow their perspective on someone to change based on the experiences you have with them. Our job as people that help run things is to have no subtext. Everything we say is exactly what we mean. And that breeds...
Because people are going to find ways to create subtext no matter what we do.
Yeah, and so if you make that simple, keep that foundation nice and simple, your life is going to be so much easier.
So we've been going for a while, and I do want to get to a community question.
Yeah.
So let's make this a little simple. We're gonna come up with for steps these first two things, right? A really simple list. Step 1. Figure out we'll call them guiding principles.
Your vision. Yeah,
your vision of what you are trying to do. Step 2. Find players that are not necessarily interested in the guiding philosophy, but are going to potentially be aligned, that like being around each other, that are signing up for the full 3 to 6 month commitment that you have.
Yep.
Step 3 is build a schedule. And then we can touch on this more, but step 4 is hold people accountable to the schedule and your guiding philosophy. And that's the basics of starting right
That's
there.
it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's set your vision, get some players that are cohesive, attitude over aptitude. And a quick note about finding players, it's all networking. I know it's a gross
Yep.
word. A lot of times we grow up hearing this, like, the business student, Wall Street guys like passing out his business card. Networking is not an awful thing. Well, all it is, and this is how human communities. I have a whole fucking hour tangent I can get on about that. I'm not going to get on it. Leverage the network of people that you know, and ask them for help. Go to the servers, look for players. Like, there is no one-shot way to find players,
I get
and the only way you're going to do that
dozens
is by
of
learning.
messages every split of, hey, do you know anybody trying out?
Yeah.
Hey, do you know anybody that's looking for this role? I get these messages constantly because I have a very large network of people.
And you can introduce people to that network. Allow people
Absolutely.
to just lean on the people around you. So step one is set your vision. Step two, get some players. You leverage your network to find people for tryouts. Step
Yep.
three, build a schedule. Just right away start building that schedule.
Yep.
And step four, be accountable to the vision in the schedule. Be flexible, but be accountable.
At least if we'll talk about other steps. We'll talk about other things.
That's getting
But
started.
at the end of the day,
That's all you need.
everything else from here is just refining those things.
Yep. Yep.
There is no deeper anything. If you can do these four things, you can build a team and you can have a successful org.
Everything else
That's
is
the
refinement.
core.
Coaches, that refines step one.
Yep.
That's refining the vision.
And depending on what you need your coach to, that can be four as well.
Yep, exactly.
It's everything comes back to these things.
And the roles are determined. The roles are not important. It's the responsibilities that we've described here.
Yes.
It does not matter who does what. It does not matter Hell, it doesn't even really matter qualifications, right?
Yep.
It just matters that these things are getting done, and
I
that
have
everyone
had
is on the same page at all times.
In terms of team results, I have had more success with players lower ranked than me as quote unquote head coaches than I have players in masters.
I've seen it's crazy.
And it's so many different things with different responsibilities, and the terms coach, head coach, assistant coach, draft coach, manager, all of this can be used interchangeably.
Yeah.
What these things mean are going to be different for every team and every organization.
Yep. That's it.
But that's it. It's not like
the 3 to 4 main steps to get a team started.
It sounds way harder than it is, and it is way harder than you think it is. I'm not trying to say it that way, because a lot of what you have to do is be accountable and hold people accountable well after they are no longer super excited and a honeymoon period is over. Yep. But that's a different conversation about maintaining this.
So we've got plenty of topics going forward. Maintaining a team, maintaining an org, growing an org, evolving a team, ranking
please
up.
Go to the forum, ask questions about that. We can do that. Like if you have, I don't want to get into like specific scenarios, because almost always the answer is talk to your team. Your results may be different than anybody else's.
Results may vary.
Right, your results may vary, but like please ask questions if you don't know how to do this, if you don't know how to do that, if like ask. That's how we figure it out. Tex over the years has asked me so many questions. I have asked questions of Tex. Part of the reason that we are comfortable talking about this is we have spent really about 2 years talking back and forth, trying on both ends to do this better.
And where we are now compared to where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, like it has changed and oscillated so much.
And our ideas have changed and grown, and they will continue to change and grow.
And it all comes
part
with
of my reason
your community, talking with people, ask us questions, ask people around you questions.
Part of my reasoning for doing this is I want overall the low elo competitive scene in North America, and by that I mean silver, gold, plat.
Yep.
I want this to be a thriving, successful thing, and the more energy that I can put from my experience in the space, both as a tournament organizer, a player, a team captain, everything that I've done is to try to share this knowledge so that people don't have to learn all the things that I have learned from the beginning.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that the pathos, the ethos, whatever the terms are. This is why we wanted to do this. But we are at an hour 15-ish into this. Let's look at our questionnaire, some of the responses we got, to kind of help drive towards wrapping up this chat here. So let's see here. I would like to ask, I think just that first question. Let's start with that one and then see if there's any other questions on there we want to ask for now or save for later.
So the question is, have you ever thought about branching into other games? If so, which games? In fact, I have.
Oh, yeah? Which game did you branch into?
Valorant.
Okay, yep. I think I remember something.
I also at the time tried to run the Valorant League for ZGG.
We had one split of that, right?
Yeah.
Or two?
One split, and it never happened again because I wasn't willing to do it after the amount of headaches that happened. And honestly, the main reason that I didn't do a second one was I really wanted to implement like division caps the way that our general league tournaments have. Yes. And I could not find like an OPGG for Valorant at that time.
It's incredible. So I've thought about trying to set up a Valorant team, but I don't have a network of players.
I didn't either.
Much less that are all in the same rank. And also, I only know of Victoris. That's the only Valorant league that I know of. So that's one of the challenges with starting teams, especially if you wanted to do something outside of League of Legends, is finding a place that has an established. It doesn't have to be populated very much, but it has to be established to a degree with like process and tools. Like League of Legends comp scene would not exist without OPGG. Or something similar to that. Like it just wouldn't exist.
It would not.
And so that's kind of that is one of the hard parts about trying to branch out into other teams is, and we can get into this in another episode, but when you're building a team, you're thinking in a lot of ways. If you're building a team, like generally ethically and more, and practically, you're thinking a lot like a tournament organizer. And you're going to be using a lot of the same tools to validate players and find players and all that other stuff that a tournament organizer is going to use. And if you're trying to apply that mentality, like if I'm trying to go into Valorant and use OPGG surrogates for Valorant, I need to have an OPGG surrogate. If I wanted to do Halo Infinite stuff, I would need to have an OPGG surrogate. I would need to have networks of Discord servers and tournaments. And that's because if that stuff doesn't exist, if that foundation doesn't exist outside of your own org and outside your own team, then you would have to be the one to start that. And that's a whole other ball game.
The other thing that I'll say is that for a lot of the stuff that I know about, right, and I'm not of like, are mainly Riot games, right? Mm-hmm. Like TFT, Legends of Runeterra. I don't have a lot of contacts in the wider world of other games. So that's mainly my main issue. Yeah. And I'm not passionate about it. That's the other thing. That's what I learned with Valorant is like I did Valorant more because from both the ZGG end and like the FTD end because there was hype and things about that. Yeah. I would argue that the FTD Valorant team was one of the biggest failures, even though it was incredibly successful and an incredibly good team, was because it was just all new people. Like the people that I knew and loved and were part of FTD just were excluded from that because we were basically getting diamond players in Valorant.
It was just another.
It was just another community, and like I really failed to try to integrate them both.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the tough parts
because people share different interests. So like it's not something that I've ever considered again.
I did it in once. Rev. We've got a decent, and I want to use that as a launching point. We have a lot of our community members that are into Omega Strikers.
Right.
And Shang is trying to drive, from a foundation's perspective, some amateur Omega Strikers tournaments. And I'm going to hopefully work with him as well on that. It's unfortunate the tournament is happening while I'm moving, but this first one.
Right.
But, generally speaking, I want to help with that. But the point I'm getting at is that I am a lot more interested in trying to drive towards Omega Strikers, which is a game that I enjoy and I'm passionate about, but maybe not as much as others. But it's got its foundation with our community of people that are here because of Revolution, because of League, and they already have that connection. They have those relationships. And that's going to make it a lot easier for those who are maybe burned out on League but are enjoying this game and like want to transition or something to that effect, right? It gives you that foothold, that foundation to get started. So that's when we're talking about what are other games we'd want to branch out to and how and all that stuff. That's it's really hard to say because it's like starting fresh, more fresh for me than anything else because I have to find a game I'm passionate about or that people are passionate about, find a network of other people in tournaments and orgs that are already doing this. And if that doesn't exist, how do you build it from the grassroots? All that stuff really complicates the picture and is not something I have tried yet. I might be interested in trying it eventually, but haven't tried it yet.
My word of caution from like dealing with stuff like this from ZGG of like people requesting like Riot Games
Mm-hmm.
and being the person that was willing to go out and try to make these things happen. Um, Generally, hype for this kind of stuff lasts like 3 weeks.
And then
If it's not if it doesn't have excitement like 6 weeks out, it's generally not worth doing.
mm-hmm.
Because the issue that I've had with both with the Valorant League and the Legends of Runeterra League I'm not going to try to sit here and say that like the format was super great. It wasn't. Like there are issues from my end that made
But you
those
can
things
usually get past the
worse.
format if people are just enjoying the game.
Right, but most of the time, the people that were really requesting these things were no longer hyped about it by week 4,
Mm-hmm.
which generally, even as fast as I could go, would be about like at best the second week of whatever league I set up.
Right.
And
It's
so
it's
like
tough
that's
because like
that's the
you
one
kind
thing
of
that if
want to
you're
like.
considering other games or other
Mm-hmm.
whatever, it's one, are you dedicated to it, and two, do you have a player base for it?
Yeah. Do you have a player base? And I feel like it'd be a lot easier if I wanted to go start a Dota team than it would be to start a Valorant team because
Yep.
Dota's established. People play that game. People like the experience is known, understood, and there's people that like to play that. Valorant is still kind of getting this thing sussed out, and
Yep.
and if you're starting with something even newer, like when Valorant first released back in 2020, it's like
Yep.
it's even harder because there's the energy and excitement there, but no one knows how to play the game,
Yep.
and that is just going to cause it's just going to make it hard for people to stay committed to it. Sorry, it's going to be hard to have a consistent program, amateur esports program, for a game that has just come out because it's so volatile. You have no idea where things are going to go.
And especially from my perspective now too, I don't want to just blindly trust someone else. I want to know this game. I want to have
Yes.
experience in this game. Even if I'm having somebody else run that quote unquote division, if I'm running an organization, I want to know and understand that game so that I can kind of be qualified enough to look over a person's shoulder and see what's happening. But that also goes into maintaining
So to get down
organization.
to kind of directly answering the question with regards to like, because Leper, you're not running any orgs, you're playing on
I'm
teams.
not
You're
running any
focused as a player.
orgs. I'm not.
So
I
you're
don't
and you're
intend to
and you're
anytime
stuck with
soon.
League. you're
Yep.
stuck in on League, and that's your game. For me, as the Rev owner, Omega Strikers is like a thing we're softly branching into. Outside of that, there's been discussion about doing Valorant, and there's been discussion about doing some other stuff, but nothing has really formulated, and I have not pushed down that path because, man, we're still getting our shit together for League. We're
Right.
still learning and growing from that perspective.
Some stuff, like I don't think it would be too hard. Like if somebody came to me and wanted to be like, "Hey, can you help me just deal with the admin stuff and be an intermediary for me because I want to go into this TFT league or this Legends of Runeterra league or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a much easier thing for like an individual person
Yeah.
versus like a team game. That's the only other thing that I'll say.
Um, I want to answer one of these other questions on here before we wrap up from the community. And that question
Okay.
is whose banhammer is bigger, Doc's or Tex's? And I think, Leper, I think you probably know the answer to that question as much as I do.
Yeah,
It's Doc.
I think so. It is Doc. Just
Doc has the
easily Doc.
biggest banhammer between the two of
Yeah.
us. Even Scruffo has a bigger banhammer than I do, man.
You don't ban people.
I've banned like one or two.
You don't ban people. Okay.
But I don't really ban people. I don't.
No.
I allow everyone else to
Other
do that.
people to do it.
I
see,
okay. I okay it. I have to. That's one of the things that like is kind of like no one else needs to have the anxiety, responsibility, or pressure to be the one to pull that trigger, right? That's one of the things you sign up for when you start the team, and if you're going to be a point of authority in an organization, you take on the accountability to do the hardest stuff, and you don't take credit. Like one of the things is like it's not my job to take credit for the things that Mystic and Scruffo and Shanghai and Aardvarks have done, and then all of our staff, right, Wingman and Zillion and Amber and blah 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 blah. Sorry, we got a lot of stuff posting.
So
It's not. I don't ban a lot of people. Doc did a lot of the banning when we had the issues, and then so yeah, so he's got the bigger ban hammer. Sorry. Go
so
ahead.
this is I'm not gonna go into this because I could go on for
Sure.
like 2 hours about this, right? But this is, I think, a topic for our next time,
Okay.
which is, and you've kind of touched on it there and set it up, but this is, I think, a topic for next time, which is, if you are in charge, everything is your fault.
Yep. Took a note on that real quick. Everything is your fault. And it's not your staff's fault. You don't get to deflect blame.
It's not your staff's fault. You don't get to. We will keep talking about this if we don't stop.
Yes.
Tex.
Okay. We're going to cut it there. We're going to cut it there. We're an hour and 25 into this first episode of Where the Elders Roamed. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We will try to do this every week for as long as schedules work out, and we'll do an episode a week until
And as
we
long
work
as,
through.
especially if people are asking questions and giving us stuff to jump off on.
So
this is some.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I can convince Tex to roll this into doing silver scraps again, but we'll see.
We'll see. I'm very interested in getting back into silver scraps.
Especially
life
with me currently being teamless. I might do more content stuff.
Oh yeah, I love your content. Always
Who
love
knows?
it. See if we can get Decker in too. He's taking a little bit of a hiatus, but that'd be a fun retro throwback. But anyways, to wrap things up here real quick, folks, you will be able to find this episode's video on YouTube. You'll also be able to find we might stream it live on Twitch. I don't know yet, but you'll at least be able to find the video and audio on YouTube. And I'm going to try to set up a Spotify account so folks can listen in on Spotify. And we'll try to set up through Acast so you guys can have some on the road, on your walks, ear stuff. I was trying to come up with something witty to say and I lost it. But anyways, you'll be able to find Where the Elders Roams on those platforms once this episode goes live. Please, if you have anything that you'd like to share for us or any questions you'd like to ask of us, go to the Revolution Esports Discord and there will be a post in the announcements channel with the form link for the Google Forms. Go in, throw some questions at us, and we will work through that backlog as we go. We're not going to get to all of them all the time, but we do want you guys to put those questions in there. Other than that, thank you for listening. I've been Tex.
I have been Leperkoopa.
This has been Where the Elders Roam. Thank you guys for tuning in. Talk to you guys later.